Next, we have a very great, amazing panel of disruptive leaders from VMware, Facebook, and RingCentral, and I'll have our moderator, amazing moderator, Jos Dirkx, to introduce them. But before that, I'll love to introduce Jos to you, all of you. So Jos is live with us from Amsterdam. She is a global speaker. She's a founder of an AI company, CEO and co-founder of Beenova.AI. She's an author, and she is a leading expert in the future of work, learning, diversity, inclusion, and conscious leaderships. She works with global corporates to transform lives through emotional and artificial intelligence, enhancing leadership, performance, and conscious development skills. So Jos, welcome, and take it over and introduce our great panel.
Thank you so much, Carl. Such a pleasure to be here today. I'm so excited about this panel on the future of work and appreciate your words. So happy to introduce you to the panel that we've got. We're going to start with Shankar Iyer. Shankar is the Senior Vice President and General Manager of End User Computing at VMware. This responsibility includes overall business strategy and performance, product management and marketing, R&D, market positioning, and customer success. Then I'm happy to introduce you as well to Natarajan. Since 2020, Nat has served as the Executive Vice President of Products and Engineering at RingCentral, a global leader in cloud-based business communications. In this role, Nat leads product engineering, cloud operations, IT, and security teams. And finally, I'm happy to introduce you to Karan Anand. Karan serves as Vice President, Head of Business Products at Facebook. He specializes in building multi-sided marketplaces, consumer internet ecosystems, enterprise SaaS businesses with a focus on monetization and growth hacking. Karan is passionate about incubating new products and expansion to emerging markets. So excited to have everybody here today. We have about 30 minutes together. We're going to make the most of our time together. And of course, we are going to accept some audience questions. We can't get to all of them, but we're going to do our best. Without further ado, let's get right into it. Now, globally, we've been looking back on a year of remote work, and we discussed it a little bit offline already. There's a lot that's changed and a lot that's happened. But I'd like to turn this over to you. What are some of the future of work trends that you're seeing? And what has this year shown us that employees actually need in order to thrive?
I'm happy to
so go ahead, Nat, please.
I'm happy to start. So not only has this been a year of great learning and adjusting across the globe, I think I happen to fall into those categories of starting a new role in this pandemic. And how do you connect with teams that you haven't met? How do you interview in the process when you don't meet people, you don't have the physical connections? And one thing that I found is multimodal communication is here to stay, right? It's not video or phone or chats or messages. I think multimodal communications are something that is here to stay, right? The post-pandemic, we all talk about hybrid work, distributed work. So the concept that I want to put to you guys is, I think what is changing is ensuring equity of information in this new world going forward. I think that's something which this multimodal communication will enable us with different tools, but it's a focus, right? We want to ensure that everybody has access to the same information. Business communication is essential for teamwork and business success. So in this new world, how do we ensure participant equity of information going forward? Just a thought, and I'll leave you with that. Shankar, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Nat. I'm actually excited to share two surveys we did last year and this year, actually. The first one was, end of summer last year, we sponsored with Bands & Bone across about 6,000 participants, largely enterprise users. There were three interesting stats that came up. Of course, we all know that there was this dramatic shift to remote work, but these three might actually amaze you. The first thing was that embracing remote work has actually leveled the opportunities, the playing field. So for instance, we found that 72% agreed that smaller organizations are able to adapt faster than larger organizations. And second is that 80% of high-performing organizations believed that remote work will actually be a competitive differentiator. The second interesting thing was that, and we found this at VMware, that satellites are no longer sidelined. So many companies have satellite offices, and 73% of respondents actually agreed that innovation is coming from more places in the organization. So, there's a tremendous opportunity for us to leverage these different places to, for instance, build diversity and inclusion. And the last stat I would leave you with is that, 65% of employees felt far more empowered to speak at video conference meetings than in person when they were remote, because there was equitability and democratization of people coming in. So these are very interesting statistics that give us an opportunity to actually make an impact on the future of work and the future-looking organizations.
That's lovely. Thank you. Karan, is there anything you'd like to add?
Indeed. Actually, I'm still processing Shankar's stats, and they're pretty mind-numbing. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Shankar. I think for me, it's not been about future of work as much as been about a recognition of who we are, and it's all about people. And people who've gone through this transformation and their lives and the difference between a work life, personal life, I don't think that the stock concepts exist anymore. So a lot of the future of work trends that we're seeing or we'll see, it will be mostly centered around people and treating people holistically. They have a work life, they have a work persona, they have a personal persona. And right before this call started, there was a little banter we were having on, should we have backgrounds in Zoom calls or not have backgrounds in Zoom calls? And small things like that really matter. So I think for me, the biggest takeaway is if we do not put people first in everything we think about, we will end up building for the wrong future of work, which is again about productivity and access and information. I think those things are important, but what really matters is treating humans the way they are supposed to be in a far more equitable way.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And it ties quite nicely into what Nat started by saying as well, which is that hiring process, which now no longer is about the connection as much as it is about how is this going to translate on video or on voice. And of course, we're limiting our human engagements that way. So thank you so much for bringing that up, Karan. That's great. So let's move to our next question in that case. If we think about that and what it means to keep humans centric in this digital future of work, how can we suggest to companies, what do we know from our own experience that allows us to revolutionize this employee experience, but still ensures that we adequately upskill, that we adequately reskill, that we are mindful of mental health? What can we do? What are some of the best practices that we can incorporate to make sure that that stays top of mind?
Yeah, so Jos, maybe I'll quickly go because there's another set of statistics that we uncovered, which is really telling, right? The flip side, what are the challenges? And I'm sure a lot of, hope Nat, I'd love to hear yours and Karan's feedback on what we've seen at RingCentral and Facebook respectively. But we found, for instance, in the Forrester survey, 70% of employees indicated expectations are changing frequently. We've seen this at VMware, right? In this world of remote work. 66% of employees are burning out and leaving a company. So that's pretty telling, right? I think this whole Zoom fatigue has made its way rounds, and I'm sure it's actually true. And 64% felt that an increasing remote work created significant barriers to communication. This is all on the employee side. Now, ITs have different challenges around process, technology, and clearly security, right? So, while I think there are opportunities that manifest itself with the shift to, remote work or work from anywhere, I think there are incredible challenges that we need to address. I'll turn it over to Karan and Nat to see what they have to say.
I can go. I think, so just building on that, Shankar, I think for me, I see these are the big patterns. First and foremost is I don't think we still know what the post-pandemic world will look like. And I know we're all looking for hey, this is going to be remote, hybrid, distributed. And I still think the world we've experienced in the last 18 months or 16 months is a very weird proxy of what the world actually might look like. Because we really don't know what equitable work experiences will look like, how much time will be on Zoom. Will Zoom actually feel or I shouldn't say Zoom, video conferencing should feel anywhere close to being equitable right now, because right now we are all equal sized boxes on a screen. Imagine how that changes when you have 20 people sitting in a real room and you have two boxes on a screen on side where it doesn't feel equitable anymore. So my sense is there are two things we have to be super aware of. One, at some point, it's not about IT, it's not about HR. Like, these are two very separate things. This is going to force HR and IT to come together like never before. We have to have people thinking and IT and tech thinking super tightly coupled to think what is the next generation of tools and technologies we need. That's one. And hopefully we'll co-develop and co-create what the future should look like. The second is actually really important, which is when we go back, a lot of people talk about we should go back to when we go back to normal or post-pandemic. I think if we go back to normal, we lost a huge opportunity. Literally, like the universe just whacked us hard last year. And if we go back and after the pandemic's over and go back saying, oh, that's business as usual, then we lost an opportunity to learn from what is it, as you said, Shankar, was awesome about being able to work remotely, that we need to incorporate back into our working lives. So instead of actually giving like real specifics or three things that should change, I think what needs to change is our attitude towards embracing what the new normal could be and bringing in the right stakeholders on the table. HR and IT coming as an example together will be really critical to create the crucible for figuring out what the new normal could be. Nat, what do you think?
No, look, great points, both Shankar and Karan. I mean, build on what you guys are saying. I think one challenge that I'm seeing in this world, on the positive side, I think when we started, most IT companies saw increase in productivity. Hey, the number of releases we have, the number of changes we made, the number of software releases, they all went up to the right. So, hey, this is great. There's no loss of productivity. The flip side of that coin is I see a lot more stress, fatigue, and friction. So what would have been a small minor interaction turns into a big flare up between people and teams and between functions. And because you don't have that personal touch and connection, that is one thing that I'm noticing. The second thing, Karan, you said this, is we feel trapped in this box, right? These boxes on the screen, we feel trapped in that. So I won't make a pitch, but I've lived in the RingCentral product for the last 4 months that I've been here. And one of the most used features for me is that I can easily, transfer this to my mobile phone when I have to go and, get my pizza for lunch, or I have to take my puppy out for a walk without seamlessly, feeling like I'm locked into this box and I cannot move, right? So I think we got to figure that out. The last thing I'll build on what you said, Karan, is yesterday I had the opportunity to go and spend 4 hours in the office. We had a few people in the office, and it's interesting. We are not set up for this distributed workspace, because all of a sudden, both participants on the screen and in the office have suboptimal experiences. Because over the last year, we have optimized for everything virtual. And now I think we have to start, HR and IT, like you said, and also facilities have to come together to figure out how do we make this new reality optimized, because it's not today.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
Thank you so much for that. And I think we can have a moment of gratitude for Shankar coming with statistics, which is really great. So really appreciate that. And thank you, Karan, for your ideas as well, and Nat for introducing us to the fact that you have a puppy. That's great. It's those kinds of things that we know make up real life while we're trying to make it work in this pandemic. A point really that's interesting here is around productivity. What does productivity really mean as well in the future of work? Because again, that mental health piece and making sure that people feel safe and that they're thriving, like we heard Dom say at the end of his presentation just now, that's going to be key. So allow me to go into our next question. Knowing that we're building this hybrid / remote / work from anywhere culture, we can essentially hire staff and teams and new employees geographically anywhere. And we see people making personal and professional decisions to live in different locations. But how do we ensure that that remains equitable? How do we
looks like
that stays safe, equitable?
Yes, I think you're breaking up, but I think I'll key off of what Nat said a little bit. This new model of hybrid work is something we need to look at very, very carefully, because it requires us to shift from thinking about remote work to really shifting to what I think a lot of the analysts are now starting to call, anywhere organizations, meaning you have to build a culture of working from anywhere. I think that's the fundamental thing. I think, Jos, you sort of alluded to it. Culture is very deep. It reflects how the organization, propagates attitudes. It's about policies. It's about people, how they relate to each other in these organizations and with other stakeholders outside. So I think a big aspect of it is, first of all, building this anywhere culture, which is how do you respect the fact, as Nat said, people working in multiple modalities at different times in different roles, right? So recognizing that and creating a framework, a blueprint that supports it. Second, of course, is technology. I think we're all technologists, right? This is a technology conference. And there is an opportunity for just tremendous innovation, in my opinion, right, to drive this anywhere organization, right, across facets of employee experience and interaction, across facets of security, which is by the way, probably the one that's coming to the fore from a technology standpoint, because security is a big concern for almost every CISO and CIO. And the last is just manageability. How do you manage this morass of complexity? So I think that's where we'll have to shift. And then, of course, take advantage, as Karan said, of let's not forget the benefits that we gain from remote work. Let's tap into that. Let's go build far more diverse organizations. Let's go hire talent from multiple places and so on. I'll turn it back to Jos, you or Nat or Karan.
Go ahead, Nat, if there's anything you'd like to add.
Bill, and that's super quick. I think, and there's a weird lag, which is the joys of doing this remotely. So it's always fun. I think a plus point to everything Shankar said. I think there are a ton of technical challenges, which also, being a technology community, which means there's a ton of opportunity on what innovation needs to still happen in this space. And I'm sure there'll be a bunch of unicorns and decacons that get formed based on this transformational shift. For me, what matters is, in addition to that, is something very different, is building deep empathy that this is going to be different and it's going to be hard. Small things like, hey, I am pretty sure, and we were talking about this again before the call, this is Friday evening for yours in Amsterdam, right? Scheduling this at a time when it's not convenient for someone it's a very small gesture, but it's a really important one, because imagine if you had a team sitting in Asia Pacific, they could not join this. Mm-hmm. These small things, but they add up very, very quickly in terms of, we want to be equitable. So we'll invest in all the technology. Unless we fundamentally change our processes, people, and all anchored in empathy, it'll be really hard to stay true to what we're trying to do, which is bring this distributed, talent, diverse talent, which lives across the world, into the fold. They will be hired. They might even be productive a little bit, but they'll not feel inclusive. So that's the part I was saying is it has to be deeply rooted in empathy, a ton of training required, and then small things even in the tools. Work on, and Facebook will work on this product called Workspace, and the feature requests we've got are like nothing super complicated, like, hey, go build amazing DMZ zone support. Like, I think there are amazing companies who do that. We got features like, can you just put, when you show people's names, parentheses, which time zone they're in, how they pronounce their name, he or him, and these are the small things that really matter in making the workforce actually feel inclusive of the talent they bring. So I think, just to sum that up, I think obviously there's insane amount of tech innovation that still needs to happen in this space, and I think there's some pretty cool work happening, including from companies on the call. But there's a ton of innovation that needs to happen in changing the empathy and bringing in the people aspect back into the technology. Otherwise, we'll end up creating a far more lopsided ecosystem where certain centers of gravities will still be super powerful and at the expense of a lot of other distributed people. So, Matt, what do you think?
Oh, look, great points. I love the Shankar anywhere organization, and I love your challenge on tools and productivity. So I'll pick up both of that. So we are going to live in this world of anywhere organization. I think that's the future where we're headed. So the challenge, this is a tech conference. We have many technologists here. How do you get to a point where you have tools that enable you to go to less meetings and not more, and offer cliff notes to Jos, who doesn't have to wake up at 2:00 at night? So how do you have tools which say, hey, you attend this meeting every week, but you never speak. Maybe you don't need to attend it, and let me send you cliff notes of what happened there. How do you detect emotions in a meeting where people are distracted and give the speaker or the people in the room some indication of what they need to do to bring in different energy? That's what we do in physical rooms. So how do we use technology to make these things real in this anywhere world? I think that's a challenge I would put to all of you. All of you will build this ecosystem over a period of time, but I think we have to figure out how we build those capabilities, empathy, productivity into it, not saying we need to have more meetings or we need to have more discussion, because we probably need to have less of these things.
Thank you so much for that. I'm hearing things like empathy and energy, and that is tough to transfer unless you're making a conscious effort to do so. And most people are unaware of that conscious effort. So appreciate Karan already bringing up a few practical and simple ways in which to do that. And that already shows that we're at least being conscious of the other person's situation. So makes a big difference. Thank you for sharing those great ideas. And thank you, Nat, for sharing as well. All right, so we do know that we are in a room of technologists, and I'm gonna have to swing it back to technology, and then we have a few audience questions coming in as well, so we'll close out with those. But let's just quickly talk about which kind of tech backbone you feel is really gonna lead the future of work. And for example, how will AI potentially shape the future of work?
Yeah, so go ahead, why don't you go ahead, please.
No, I was just going to say, I think multimodal communication is here to stay. So this is one thing. I think we can have better interactions between messaging or video or phones, right? And not just one or the other. Secondly, I think AI is already being used in several different ways. I think for instance, I have teams globally, right? And I would love to have closed captioning translated into multiple languages when I'm talking to a global audience. We bought a company called Deep Effects, which actually can detect emotions during a discussion and then nudge people based on that, right? So these are some capabilities that we are using sort of transcription and saying, hey, these are the action items from the discussion we had at the end of the session, and sharing that with all the participants. These are some areas where I think AI, it's still nascent, but it can be leveraged to really make life easier and more productive.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think Jos, what you said and Nat talked about, AI is going to be big. I'll break it down into what I think there are three sort of major areas of impact, if you will, in these future of work organizations. The first one is, as Nat pointed out, is sort of enabling these multimodal experiences. So it's all about employee experience, user experience, and there I think you're going to see AI play a big role. I think the second part is automation. Two examples. One, I think both Karan and Nat mentioned, is these cues that you might have, very sort of contextual cues that come up, right? Whether it's how people pronounce their name or just people's name, where the location they are, and so on, as you start to collaborate, across boundaries. The second, which is actually an IT thing, which we've been asked for, is a lot of employers are saying, we don't know how this employee is functioning. So there is this whole space emerging called employee experience management or user experience monitoring. They call differently, but that will be really, really, really important. The second area, and I come back to that, is absolutely going to be security, right? It's the same thing. And AI is going to be huge there, because you have to collect various points of input, depending on that employee's context, what device or modality they're working on, which network are they on, what location they're on, what is their role, et cetera, And you're going to combine all this vast array of data that you collect across the different facets, from the device tier, the user tier, the, sort of the network tier, the cloud tier, and even sort of backend application tier, if you will, wherever they run. And you're going to sort of munge it and create this tremendous amount of risk analytics to determine what is that risk to that employer in the modality that an employee is working on. And the third is just leveraging automation, right? That is powered by this derived data, if you will, the analytics, to simplify IT stacks. I think because otherwise IT can't cope in this world, right? This work from anywhere is going to put tremendous burden on IT. And many of us in the technology industry are suppliers to technology from IT. IT buys a lot of infrastructure, technology, and tools from us. So there is a tremendous opportunity for all the innovators in this audience to start thinking about what impact can they have to simplify the complexity and, of course, the cost that is incurred to IT. So that's where I think we'll start to see an impact.
Yes, I'll take a different time horizon for this answer, if it's okay. I think Nat and Shankar hit the nail on the head on there's a ton of innovation that needs to happen, even in a call like this, for example, like real-time feedback. But the part I'm super excited about right now is, AR and VR was mostly used for gaming for so far, and in the last 12 months, we've seen VR finding some amazing use cases in our daily lives, and then what's coming in the next 12 months is just mind-boggling. So right now, obviously I'm staring at you guys all on a flat screen, and it's kind of hard to even. I would love to just turn around and say, "Hey, I agree with you, Jos, and I agree with Shankar. Can do that," but we would soon, hopefully. The two examples I want to take just to seed, with the amazing technologists who are probably watching this, is one example is Walmart. Imagine. It's not about knowledge workers alone, right? There's a lot of workforce which is not in offices. So we have to think about what happens with people who don't even have access to the technology like the way we do, and building for it. And a great example is just imagine the amount of workforce churn that Walmart goes through, and they have to train so many people constantly. They normally would fly a lot of their store managers into Bentonville and train them. And last year, for the first time, we saw them saying, "Hey, can't travel. How do I still make up and make sure Walmart's running? Because otherwise, at least US will stop running if Walmart stops." And they got everyone VR headsets would show up, and they would do, how do you do training on stocking shelves all the way to checking out. Things which would have been cost prohibitive or technically not possible in this new world is now possible with the use of VR. Obviously, you need insane amount of network backbone and infrastructure and compute, everything that Shankar and I talked about. You need all of that. But building in a new modality, which will be far more mixed reality, augmented reality, and virtual. And second one is, how do these meetings become 3D and immersive all over again? So I do get a sense of simple things like spatial audio, which I'm sure RingCentral already builds like spatial audio. So I know you're at my left or you're at my right. Now imagine I'm actually feeling I can walk up to a whiteboard and write. And those will be examples of things that you can do relatively soon now. And all of this got fueled by the pandemic. So I think amazing stuff that AI can do today. Cool things that are coming with vision, and then there's a huge future being formed right now in this world of AR and VR, and I'm just super excited to see what that will unlock for people.
Thank you for that. Thank you so much. And of course, we want to stay mindful that none of that widens the gap between those that have access to the tech and that don't. So I love the idea that you already touched on, Karan. How are we building for that to still be as inclusive as possible? And that's a great conversation. We should definitely have another day. We have got a few more minutes in our panel today, so I'm going to switch it over to one audience question and then one closing question, which is going to be around what has inspired you in these last 12 months. So you should probably already maybe want to think about that. But before we switch to that, there's a few questions that came from the audience. I'm going to choose this question here. This is around when we return to normal, and we already spoke about maybe avoiding that because we did get the opportunity now to really learn and accelerate. So in any case, do we see certain cultural or regional differences in the new digital workplace, and what does that actually mean?
A ton. I mean, that's I can start with that one because we quite literally live that day in, day out. Simple examples of people on the field. By the way, a lot of people just want to take 30 seconds to acknowledge that even though we are kind of thinking about coming back from the pandemic, there are parts of the world which are badly impacted. Even today, I know a lot of folks from India and Latin are watching this. Just want to just acknowledge that we understand that we're no way out of the pandemic and this craziness. So we hear you, we see your pain as well. And I'll take an example from something like that, where there will be parts of the world and cultures and areas which will not be in the same mental health space as we are. Like, we have the luxury to have this conversation. A lot of people can't join. How do you make sure that you still remain inclusive and empathetic on what's going on, and building that empathy, not just by reading news, because that kind of causes probably more depression than it builds empathy, but how do you bring that context into a meeting to know what is going on? Like, why is Nat distracted right now? Well, I don't know, maybe he's got something really important personal stuff going on with the family back in India, as an example. These are kind of things that you'll have to be pay far more attention to if you really want to make this work for everyone. So that's one example of there's a ton more context that will matter. And the more your workforce gets distributed, you'll have far more surface area of cultural things to worry about, regional things to worry about, and most importantly, back to Shankar's earlier point, context. Context will really matter.
Thank you.
Yeah, I
Nat,
think, sorry, go ahead.
Please.
Okay, so I think context really matters. I'm really looking forward to these immersive experiences because, as Karan said, in modality, it's kind of hard to understand who goes next. If we were all in a room, it would be far more seamless transition. So I think absolutely, I think regional and cultural differences will matter, and that's where I think if AI can help us, bring real-time context, and culture can help us educate on what to be sensitive about, I think we can have far more powerful experiences collectively.
Yeah, look, I'm going to say something which might be blasphemous in a virtual world, but there is no substitute to meeting people physically, and one has to do that when you lead large teams at some interval of time. I think as we go up, that's how we will continue to build the culture. All the things Karan and Shankar said, completely agree with, but we have to think about ways to bring people together as well.
Thank you, Nat. Appreciate that. And that is something I think we are all looking forward to and trying to do as much as we still can. So thank you so much for sharing that as well. So we've got about 3 minutes left. So 30 seconds, one major takeaway that either self-development, family love, consciousness, something that inspired you in these last 12 months.
I'll start. I have two boys, one in high school, one in college. And my wife's a physician, so she's the only one who leaves the house. And so 3 of us are at home, and I've really, really enjoyed having lunch with my boys every day.
That's so beautiful. That's lovely. Thank you,
yeah,
Nat.
That's a great personal story, Nat. Thank you. For me, I think, I am truly inspired to leverage this sort of new normal of work to actually make the world a better place. I think technology for years has had the promise of letting us work less and live life more. I think we have a unique opportunity to make our lives better if we can bring technology and culture to this new mode of work. I think we can do that, and that's what is inspiring me going forward.
As Nat's taken the kid story, so I'm not going to use that one, even though I have an 18-month-old, and I'm super glad I get to spend a lot of time with her. For me, it's I think the biggest takeaway has been a ton more focus on physical and mental health, a lot more meditation and a lot more workout. I think that's super important, has helped me keep kind of sane. Sane is probably a strong word in this environment, but yes, definitely a ton of focus on that really helps.
That's so wonderful. Thank you all so much. I'll be sharing my list of classical music with you, Karan, because I promise you it's kept me going, that and swimming. So I'm so grateful for our time together today. Thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure to speak with all of you. And, I think that the takeaways are that there's going to be challenges around security, around mental health, around how to merge technology with the new challenges in human resources as well, how to keep our teams engaged. And most of all, we heard this also with Dom's presentation at the end, how do we keep ensuring that this remains equitable? How do we make sure that when we broaden our horizons of who we're bringing on board in different cultures and different countries, that we still honor that person's educational journey, how hard they work, the time zones that they're in, to ensure that we can actually rebuild it how we want. Because we have an opportunity to do that right now. So I hope that beautiful leaders like yourselves continue to take that mission forward in your companies and share it as well in your communities. And I really appreciate our time together today. I'm sure that there are many more questions that we unfortunately can't field right now, but let's look forward to rebuilding and really reshaping a healthy and happy future of work.
Thank you so much, Jos.
Thank you, Jos. Thank you, Carl. Nice to meet you guys. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you so much.
It's a great honor to have them. The